We do percentages in here. We did, didn't we? We talked about students and how many students and stuff. Okay. Y'all don't have any more questions besides that? You don't know how to do so? That's not a question, that's just a statement.
I need you to help me learn how to do it.
You will have to come see me in my office because that's more than we can do during the course. We spent like days doing sig figs, and if you just tell me right now I don't know sig figs, then yeah, I can't help you with that, right? You need special help.
I need, yeah.
Come see me. Okay, fair enough. Look on schedule on my door. Just find a time that doesn't have anything on their schedule. Come see me. And if you're worried about me not being there, email me. I'll tell you if I'll be there or not. Okay? Has anybody sent me an email this semester I haven't responded to? You, but I got yours, and I told you today I got it. I didn't respond to yours?
No.
What was your email?
It was about that, like when I got switched out of your lab course. And I was like, am I going to get an absence? Because I didn't know until later. And
I told you no, that we would fix that.
No, you didn't.
Don't worry about it. I responded to it. I told you not to worry about it. I remember.
Well, I still got an absence anyway.
Who cares?
I
It
do.
ain't gonna matter. I'll talk to Miss Owens. You'll be all right. Remind me.
Yes.
Sometimes I'll get emails and I don't think they need responses because I'm just like, oh, that's information for me to have. And I'll be like, okay, I just accumulate that. If there's not like a question in there, I don't normally respond to it. Okay? But like if you email me with a question like, hey, I'm having trouble with problem 2.38, I can go into mastering and I can see all your attempts and you can tell me, here's what I'm trying to do. And I can say, oh, like a girl emailed me the other day and was asking about a percentage problem. And I said, oh, she goes, I hit give up, and I went and looked and she had. So I explained to her how to get the answer for that. And she said, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Okay? I think she's in the other section. All right, so if you need help, that's a great way to get help. Okay? Before we talk about density, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in mastering. So chapter 2 is due this weekend, right? And then on Monday, I think Monday at like midnight, Monday morning, right? The quiz opens for chapter 2. And it's due on like Thursday or something. It is timed. You get an hour to do it. There's 20 questions. You get 1 attempt per question. And the items are randomized. So if you think you're going to sit next to your friend and do them one at a time, it ain't going to happen. Because they're randomized. So like your question 1 might be her question 15. Right? See what I'm saying? And you only get 1 attempt. So like be really sure the answer that you enter, because if you hit C and they go, and hit some, and they go, oh crap, that was D. Oh, too bad. It's wrong. 20.
The questions based on where you have difficulty also to determine, like if you look and see where you had challenges, or is it?
Oh, and the quiz, no.
The same stuff, but it just kind of scrambled off.
Yeah, the quiz is just kind of like scrambled up chapter 2. Okay? Now, I recommend if you have to do the adaptive learning assignment, that you do that before you do the quiz, right? Some of you will be exempted out of the adaptive learning assignment. That's great. Go ahead and go do the quiz. If you're not exempted out of the adaptive learning assignment, do it first, and then you're going to try the quiz. Yeah, the follow-up. It's called a chapter 2 follow-up or chapter 2 adaptive or something like that. I don't remember what it's called.
And there wasn't a quiz for chapter 1.
There was not a quiz for chapter 1. There wasn't anything to quiz you, really.
There was an adaptive?
There was. There was an adaptive, but there wasn't a quiz.
How would you know if you were supposed to do it?
It'll tell you.
It just come out and say it?
Yeah, you can see it in the calendar. If you don't get credit for it, when you look at it, it'll give you credit for it, and it won't have one for you to do. So like chapter 1, it was the adaptive was only worth 10 points. For chapter 2, it's worth 30 points. So if it gives you 30 points automatically, that means that you didn't have to do it, right? Okay? It's like getting a free 100. If you work hard on the homework and you make a 90, you're better, right? Okay. So let's finish off chapter 2 by talking about density. Density is a cool concept. Has anybody in here ever taken advantage of density to do anything in your life? Take a bath. Or to go swimming. Boil eggs. How do you use density when you boil eggs?
Because they come under the water.
Oh, they are more dense. I wasn't thinking that way. I was trying to think of something that floated. Like, they don't float. No, they don't. They sink, don't they? And they stay covered in the water, and the water is hot, so it cooks the egg evenly. Good. When you go swimming, who floats? Why do you float? Because you are less dense than the water is. And you ladies, like, I'm really less dense than water. I float very nicely. Why do I float so well?
Your upper chest.
No, not having to do with chest. It has to do with this right here. Now, ladies, it has to do with your chest. And it also has to do with subcutaneous layer that you have. What do you ladies do that I can't do?
Give birth.
You give birth. And then after you give birth, what do? You're supposed to feed that baby, right? So you store extra energy in the form of fat underneath your skin. So in general, women float better than men. Now some men like me have an extra layer that's not a layer, it's like a big huge deposit, right? It's like a coal deposit, so it's fat. So I float well. It's rare that you see a person that does not float. The only people that do not float are people like bodybuilders and stuff, because they have such low body fat. I've only
Some
actually.
can't float. I mean,
That's because they don't. That's because they panic, because they can't relax. If they were relaxed, they would float. Unless they're. I've seen one person in my life not float at a pool, and he was like a 82nd Airborne Ranger. I mean, he was ripped. You know, there was not an ounce of fat on him. He jumped in the pool like a rock. He had trouble swimming, right? Because he didn't float at all. Okay? Because you're less dense, you float. All right? Anybody ever been on a ship before? What's the ship made out of? Made out of metal? Steel? Most ships are made out of steel, right?
Yeah.
Anybody ever drop any metal in water? What happens to it? Sinks. Wait a minute. I was on a ship. It didn't sink. Why did my ship not sink? It's made out of metal. Metal's more dense than water, right? In general. Why did the ship not sink? Not just compartments, but basically the entire ship is just like what? A big sack of air, right? It's got very little metal compared to the size of the ship it is. It's mostly empty space, isn't it? So when you average it out, the ship is actually less dense than the water. Now, one little piece of metal is more dense than water, but on average, the ship is less dense than the water. True? Buy that? I don't know. I don't seem too optimistic here. Anybody in here ever sank anything before? You ever put anything in water and watch it sink? What'd you put in water and watch it sink? What'd you put in the water? A magnet. You drop the magnet in the water and it sank. Yeah, magnets are made out of iron and steel normally. They normally sink, don't they? What else? Rock. Throw a rock in the lake. Does it float?
No.
It sinks. Why? Because it's more dense than the water. Have you ever floated anything on the water? Some wood, paper boat, tree.
like when your sunglasses fall. Most time you think they're float, but most times
They're more dense. The plastic is more dense than water normally, yeah? Cell phone's definitely more dense than water. You drop your cell phone in water, it is going to the bottom. You drop your keys in water, bottom, gone, right? What about, anybody here do any fishing? Do you use density when you go fishing? If you use a weight, or you use a float, or If you're really fancy when you go fishing, you look for density lines in the water. The water's stratified based on density. Because cold water is more dense than warm water. Warm water floats on cold water. Don't know that? Sometimes you can't because the sun warms the surface and the bottom's still cold, right? Yeah.
I tell your friend, you won't go to the bottom. You get down there, it's really cold under your feet.
No, I'll just float on this warm part. Okay? So this beaker that they have here has a bunch of things with different densities in it, right? There's a piece of lead. There's some aluminum. All have a density greater than the water. So they sink. Now ice, anybody ever looked at ice? Does it float? Yeah, ice, water's unique in that when it formed a solid, it was slightly less dense than the water. So ice floats, icebergs float, don't they? Ask people who are on the Titanic, yep, that was floating. Right? And then the cork is a whole lot less dense than the water, so it's floating up high. Right? Who has me for lab tomorrow? Anybody have me for lab tomorrow? How's a hot air balloon work? You get hot air in a balloon, what happens?
It rises.
Why? Because it becomes less dense, not because heat rises. Heat does not rise. Stop, I don't ever want to hear anybody say that. Heat does not rise. Less dense air rises. Heat gets transferred. Heat cannot move. It's not a thing.
So the heat makes the air
less dense. Yes, exactly. The heat makes the molecules move faster, they become less dense. So when it's less dense, it rises. Because it's less dense than the surrounding cold air, right? Heat doesn't rise. Heat gets carried with something. Heat on itself cannot move. It's not a thing. Okay? We'll talk about that in the next chapter. So, here's a table with a whole bunch of densities in it. And you can see some of them, some things, particularly gases, are not very dense at all. Like the air in this room, not dense, is it? I can move through it. One thing I want to point out is some things are extremely dense, right? Like a lot of metals are very dense. Like look at gold on there. Gold, 19.3 grams per milliliter. So that bar that they have, that you see the guys, when they steal bars of gold and they're like tossing them around and carrying 4 of them at a time. BS, right? Each one of those gold bars probably weighs about 50 pounds, right? Because that gold is very dense, right? So that's density for you. Some things are dense, some things aren't. It's a characteristic of it. It is the ratio of the mass to the volume. And in general, the units for density are grams per milliliter or grams per cubic centimeter. For solids, we would normally use grams per cubic centimeter. For liquids, we would use grams per milliliter. So you need to make 2 measurements in order to be able to determine density. Okay? Can you make these 2 measurements? Who's made these 2 measurements in lab before? Anybody make these measurements last week in lab?
Mm-hmm.
How do you determine mass? We don't have scales in our lab. We have balances in the lab. And how do you determine volume? How do you determine volume? A couple ways. What's the easy way? What y'all use to determine volume in lab? Huh? Some of you might not have done it yet. How do you determine volume in lab? Graduated cylinder? Or you can measure it, right? And multiply. Okay? Graduated cylinder is the easy way to do it, right? Okay? Now note that density has 2 units. So if I said that something had a density of 2.3 grams per milliliter, that's what that means, right? That's a G.